The next setting that I'm going to configure will be data history. Data history is telling the system how long do I want to store information or flow data in the database? How long do I want to store that information for? Again, I can click on data history and see that this is not configured. I have not configured any items inside of the data history tab. And then I also still have the link to the documentation page for data history. So to configure data history, I'm going to go to the admin menu. I'm going to go under settings and data history. Scrutinizer stores historical data based on averages. It starts with the historical flow 1 minute average. This is the raw data being sent by your exporters. When we configure an exporter to send flow data, we always configure the active flow timeout set to 60 seconds. By default, Scrutinizer is going to store that 1 minute data for a total of 48 hours. I can extend this amount of time by just changing this number. Maybe we want 7 days worth of 1 minute data. I'll set that to 168 hours. When Scrutinizer has 5 1 minute data points, it will then take that information. It will rank all of the conversations from the largest conversation to the smallest, and then it will roll up the top 1,000 conversations into a 5 minute average. And then that 5 minute average is then stored in the database for X amount of time. In this case, we have 168 hours or 7 days of 5 minute data. We do the same thing from 5 minute to 30 minute. We take 6 5 minute data points. We rank all the conversations from largest to smallest. We use the top 1,000 conversations and create a 30-minute average. The 30-minute average is based off of days. I can see this by hovering over the eye icon next to the 30-minute average section, and it will tell me that this will hold data for a number of days. So in this case, we have 30 days of 30-minute averages. If I want to get a better idea of the amount of disk space my historical data will take, we have a feature in 19.6 that will help you calculate the amount of disk space based on the amount of data you're trying to store. When we're on the data history tab, we can go to the calculator icon in the top right. If we select that icon, it's going to bring out this tray. This will give us the ability to see the current settings based off of what we have set in our averages on the side here. We have a test section where you could change these values and then get an idea of how much disk space that's going to take. So in this case, I have 168 hours of 1 minute data. This first table will show me the predicted hard drive utilization based off of the current settings in this top section. We'll see for 168 hours of 1M data, we'll take up 3 gigs of space based on the data that that's being collected by the system now. If I look at the current hard drive utilization, this tells me how much disk space is taken up by the data history that I have stored on the system currently. Right now I have 721 megabytes of 1 minute data, and I have a total amount of disk space of 61 gigabytes. I could take this number and stretch it out to, let's say 300 hours of 1 minute data. You'll see that there is now purple text in my predicted table that went from 3 gigs of 1 minute data to 5 gigs. I could go even further and say 3,000 hours of 1 minute data is going to take up 48 gigs in that 1 minute data history setting. This will show me that the total amount of disk used on the system will be 67 gigabytes. I could play around with these numbers and come up with a set that makes sense for the amount of history that I personally want to store and the amount of data that the disk is available. Maybe I want to stretch these out to 60 days worth of 30-minute data. I want to do the same thing for the 2-hour data. And then I can take the last setting of the 12-hour data and stretch that. I can do the same thing for the 12-hour data and say I want this is in weeks. So let's say 52 weeks will be enough for my 1 year worth of data. I can then save that with the check mark, and that's going to update the values in the settings page under data history. Now that we've configured data history, you'll see that we again changed our configuration checklist, went from 25% to 28% configured.